This is the Queen Elizabeth II, or QE2, the world's newest passenger ship, about to leave on a 3,000-mile voyage from New York to South Hampton, England. What's it like to take a trip on a huge ocean liner? What do the captain and crew do as the ship makes its way across the open sea? We'll find out today when Discovery goes on board the QE2 for a transatlantic voyage. Discovery 70, the award-winning program for young people with Virginia Gibson and Bill Owen. Hi, and welcome to Discovery. Today we're at Pier 92 in New York City, about to board a modern ocean liner for a transatlantic voyage. Our destination is Southampton, England, 3,110 miles away.
While we normally think of traveling to Europe by jet plane, the ship will carry its full complement of passengers, 2,025, and 936 crew members. In the next few days, we'll see how this self-contained community travels across the ocean.
As the passengers arrive for embarkation, the process of boarding and getting the ship underway, the excitement mounts. Many people relax and enjoy themselves with bon voyage parties with friends and relatives who have come to see them off. By the time the ship finally slips her lines and pulls away from the pier, night has begun to fall. But the passengers have a chance for a look at the spectacular New York skyline with all the city's lights just blinking on. Finally, a ribbon of lights crossing the entrance to New York Harbor, the Verrazzano-Narrows Bridge. As we approach, we realize the ship is rapidly building up to her 30-mile-an-hour service speed. Once a ship leaves the site of land, it becomes self-sufficient, an island community, remote and alone, but with every comfort and convenience of a modern city.
This community serves 3,000 people and provides everything they need. There's a hospital with doctors and nurses and the latest modern equipment. There's a clothing shop. And a gift shop. Restaurants. An ordinary coffee shop like the kind you find in any American town. A daily newspaper with the latest developments from all over the world. There are beauty shops. A bank just like the one around the corner, although the money might look a little strange to us. If you wish, you can attend church on Sunday. And on any day, there's exercise up on deck.
course, the wonder of this island community, Jenny, is that it's moving steadily at about 30 miles an hour across an ocean. The trip between New York and South Hampton, England, takes about 5 days.
That's a lot faster than most merchant ships travel, Bill, but that's still a snail's pace in an age of jet aircraft. The most obvious place to begin exploring the ship is here on the bridge, or wheelhouse. This is the nerve center, or brain of a big ship. Because the captain is responsible for every phase of the ship's operation, it isn't possible for him to spend all his time on the bridge. He has to rely on a staff of men to run her. The captain of the QE2, on this voyage, Joseph Wolfington, meets every morning with the senior officers. It's rather like a small board of directors meeting, or the meeting of a town council in which all the affairs and operation of this seagoing community are reviewed. The master of the ship is not only responsible for the safe and efficient operation of his vessel, but also for the comfort and even the entertainment of the passengers.
When things are going smoothly up here on the bridge and there are no unusual or hazardous conditions, fog or heavy seas, the captain will normally be away. Then the watch, as it's called, is manned by other ship's officers. Usually there are 2 officers on the bridge during a watch, as well as a quartermaster or helmsman who actually steers the ship on orders from the officers. The second officer on watch at the moment is Graham Ferguson.
Well, this is the radar here, which takes the place of the traditional lookout in most ships. We have 3 of them altogether. The other things which are of interest on the panel here are the bow thrusters, which are in fact 2 tubes underneath the bow there, which will move the bow backwards and forwards and takes the place of tugs. The other thing of interest, of course, is the steering tiller here, which would be used by the officer watch at sea if he wanted to alter course, because at the moment we're in automatic pilot. We have also a radio telephone here, which is for use contacting other ships at sea. And then other things which we have are the telegraphs, of course, which is the means of communicating the captain's engine movements down to the engine room itself, one for the port side and one for the starboard.
The safety of the ship and the 3,000 people on board is always the first concern at sea. Fire and the possibility of the ship sinking are still the 2 greatest hazards. Time has not changed that. And time has not changed many of the devices with which a modern ship meets these potential problems.
The life jacket, a traditional safety device at sea, is still used on ocean-going vessels. But a modern space-age approach to safety has produced some revolutionary changes. We'll look at some of these in just a minute.
If the bridge can be considered the brain of a great ship, this room might be considered her heart. All the various safety devices in the ship, watertight doors, fire stations, and so on, can be monitored here on this console and through the use of these displays all about the room.
This room, called the safety control room, is a completely new idea with the QE2. A watch is kept here 24 hours a day, even when the ship is in port. If a dangerous situation develops somewhere in the vessel, gas fumes, fire, a leak, various sensing devices relay the information here. If a fire broke out in a hold, the men here in the safety control room could release foam or inert gas from these tanks and pipe it to the trouble area to smother the flames.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. Locomotive main control.
Would you exercise the bilge injection valve on the boiler and bilge pump? The boiler main bilge suction valve.
The main bilge suction valve will do, right, thank you.
The ship's watertight doors can also be closed automatically and remotely, by simply pushing a button on the bridge. A test is run on this system every day the ship is at sea. This safety control room is right in the middle of the ship. Directly below us, 2 decks down, is the ship's power plant. The turbine engines and boilers, an electrical plant large enough to supply all the heat and electricity for a small city, and some special devices that make seawater into fresh water. This man, Chief Mechanic Jack Humphrey, supervises the maintenance and repairs of all this equipment.
We have 3 boilers. These are the largest marine boiler of their type ever built. Well, with the 3 boilers, that's given us roughly £1 million of steam every hour. We must have this steam for driving our turbines. Well, the shaft from leaving the gear, that's the gear casing, to the propeller, is approximately 200 feet in length. It is also 24 inches in diameter. Each bearing has its oil level, and it also has its own cooling system. We have 3 Weir's flash evaporators, and we can make up to 1,200 tons of water daily.
It's always a relief for the ship's engine room men when they enter this area. Outside, the noise is deafening. Here in the machinery control room, special insulation reduces the noise to a lower level. All of the various type machinery we've just seen can be controlled remotely from here. And it's here, on this telegraph, identical to the one we saw earlier on the bridge, that the orders are received for the engine. With each of these 2 levers, one for each of 2 turbine engines, a man can control 110,000 horsepower. It takes that much power to turn each of the 2 19-foot propellers at the required speed.
This is the first computer to be fitted aboard a passenger ship. It's located here because it's used to keep track of the maintenance program for the machinery in the engine room. It can also give you the ship's speed, water temperature, and time of day. But it can also be used to predict fresh water requirements and control the massive inventory of food and other items carried on the ship. The officers on the bridge can even call on the computer to help them find the most efficient course to set as she makes her way across the trackless sea. The ship has now entered the harbor for the French port of Le Havre, the only stop on our voyage from New York to Southampton.
Now we're going to see how this huge ship can be brought up to a dock and moored. And we'll do that in just a minute. Captain Wolfington and his crew on the bridge are about to dock in Le Havre. We'll be taking on some new passengers and cargo, and some of the other passengers will be leaving for trips in France and other parts of Europe.
Before the QE2 is docked here, she has to be turned completely around. Tugboats and the ship's bow thrusters, smaller propellers on either side of the prow, are used in turning the vessel. And it's all they can do to move the QE2's 65,000 tons. Every move is recorded in the log. On the bridge, Captain Wolfington and his men are assisted by a local pilot, a man with special knowledge of the currents and other conditions in the area.
Hello, can you have the bow thrusters ready, please? Can you have the bow thrusters ready? Only got one. Which one's that? The forward bow thruster. Okay, let us know when they're ready.
Gangway bridge, let me know as soon as you've got a couple of wires on so we can get the gangway.
Finally, the big ship is nudged over to the pier. Lines are put ashore, and gangplanks put in place.
Roger, in position, make fast.
We're underway once again, bound for South Hampton, our last stop. Tonight, the captain is having a reception. Later, we had dinner in the ship's dining room.
The statistics on a great ship's inventory of stores are, as you might guess, staggering. On a trip like the one we're on now, 5 days at sea, the shopping list includes 2,000 pounds of biscuits, 50,000 tea bags, 2,500 pounds of bacon, 80,000 eggs, 25,000 pounds of beef, and so the list goes on and on. The food for the entire ship, including the crew mess rooms, is turned out in this one 17,000 square foot kitchen. The man in charge is executive chef Victor Coward.
Well, I started sea in 1936 on the Empress of Britain. Well, I've never worked in a restaurant ashore, never. Spent all my life at sea. They get their menus and what salads I put on, mixed green, escarole, romaine, and fruit salads. And we make them up, then we send them into the restaurant and they're served from there. Well, we pick up our cheeses in England, Lyon, France, and the United States. And every cheese is marks with a sticker of what it is.
The food service in the dining room is under the supervision of restaurant manager Oscar Bassett.
With a restaurant of this type, it stems from the manager because he must create the right atmosphere all the way down. This brings the best out in the waiter, and in consequence, he then makes the customer happy. Well, the most important part of a crepe Suzette is the caramel. This is the base that's made with sugar, and then you liaison this with orange to get the base and a little butter to smooth it over. Then the liqueur is added. Then the crepes, which are thin pancakes, as you know, folded into the sauce, which is the sauce, and then they're finished off with the cognac.
At night on a great ship, if the seas are calm, the passengers are hardly aware that the ship is moving continuously toward its destination. After dinner, the ship more than ever takes on the air of a fine resort that could be anywhere. It just happens to float and travel at about 30 miles an hour. But in the engine room, in odd corners around the ship, on the bridge, Captain Wolfington and his watch officers keep up their vigil. They sail with pride. Pride in the tradition of British seamanship dating back hundreds of years. We'll be back in just a minute.
We hope you've enjoyed our transatlantic voyage.
If you'd like to find out more about ocean-going vessels, then ask your librarian for any of these books. The Shipbuilders by D.S. Lacy Jr., Ship 70 by David A. Parsons, and this book, Oars, Sails, and Steam by Edwin Tunis.
Be sure to be with us next week for another exciting program as Discovery continues to discover the world. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been a Jules Power production in association with ABC News.